a discussion with Dr. Oliphint from Westminster on the aseity of the Son. Now, a lot of these conversations have been prompted by what the explosion took place in early 2016 about eternal subordination of the Son, eternal functional subordination, other formulations that were under discussion at that particular point in time. And this was a conversation that was before that. This first one I want to play. The second one was as a result of it. But back in 2016, I sort of felt like I was on the outside of things, because as I'm listening to the argumentation going on, I'm going, well, the thing that I've found most vitally important that seems to be missing in so much of the modern Trinitarian conversation is the reality that, and here I am in agreement with Calvin, is that the Son is auta theos, God of himself. In later post-Nicene Trinitarian theological tradition, the Son is considered to possess aseity. He exists of himself. But that comes by extension from the Father. And Calvin said, no. If the Son is ase, he is without modification, qualification, anything like that. And this is picked up by a lot of modern Reform writers as well, thankfully. So here is just a brief clip, and I will try to remember to link to these two programs when I put the blog post together here in a few minutes. So you can listen to yourself, because I would highly recommend that you do so. But here is Dr. Oliphint. Again, the whole program, this is just one portion of it. But this is where he is talking a little bit about Thomas and Thomas's philosophy. And I agree with him here. Okay?
Let me just try to make some more enemies here. See, when I read,
he knows himself to be God the Son. He knows himself to be God the Son in distinction from God the Father and God the Spirit.
In my view,
and so that this is intrinsic to his identity from all eternity. And just in light of that,
I have no idea what's
the
playing.
Scripture teaches that he wills hypostatically, distinctly, as a distinctive agent, he wills to submit and obey. And those two texts are John 17:3 and Philippians 2:6. I'll just make two brief comments. In John 17:3, the Son says, Father, I have finished or completed the work you gave me to do. And in the context of that, it is the glory that the Son had with the Father from the beginning of time, from before the foundation of the world, from before the beginning of time, if we can speak that way. That is the context in terms of which the work was given him. It is an eternal commission. And then in Philippians 2:6, although the Son was the form of God, and that is, although he was equal with God from all eternity, in his equality with God, as the form of God, he did not consider that equality as a thing to be selfishly retained. Now that gives you access into the hypostatic consciousness of the eternal Son of God in his equality with God. I mean, this text takes you into the unity of the divine essence and affirms hypostatic consciousness, a distinction of consciousness within the unity of the Godhead, being equal with God. He, as a distinct hypostasis, did not consider that equality as a thing to be selfishly retained, but did what? Freely and voluntarily emptied himself, verse 7, humbled himself, verse 8, became obedient to death on a cross. And Herman Ritterboss puts it this way in Paul, I forget the page number, but he says, He says, the disposition of obedience that you see exercised in time is predicated here of the eternal Son in his equality with God. So that disposition to obey is freely, voluntarily undertaken. It is not a function of some kind of intrinsic ontological authority structure. No such thing exists within the Godhead. But notice what it does. It pinpoints that you have tri-consciousness within the unity of the divine essence. And these two texts take us, I think, very, very deeply into this issue and provide some clarity that I don't think standard, more Thomistic, uniconsciousness, functionally modalistic views of the Trinity, they just can't account for this sort of thing.
That was Lane Tipton, also from Westminster Seminary, by the way, in Philadelphia. And so I didn't get to play what the comments about Thomistic philosophy, but you'll notice Lane Tipton did make reference to Thomistic philosophy while discussing the divine persons. The reason I wanted to play those, obviously, was to ask, are these men heterodox? Because they're talking about the Pactum Salutis, the eternal covenant of redemption, and the free voluntary acts of the divine persons. Is there such thing as free voluntary acts of divine persons? Are we allowed to speak of these things? Are we allowed to affirm that the Son is autotheos? That he does not derive his participation in the being of God from the Father? But his aseity is without qualification? These men talk about the differences within Orthodoxy. But I'm hearing a lot of our people deciding that they get to define what the Orthodox now. And if you don't agree with their very narrow take on things, well, so much for you. It was refreshing to get to listen to that level of discussion, but always with this is all within the bounds of Orthodoxy concept. That was very, very